Alright, it's Catch AIDS here, and I'm going to tell you some Mortician stories from the 90s. The first time that I'd heard Mortician was around Christmas in 1994. I was at my grandparents' house in Northeast Ohio, and I was listening to some Cleveland College radio station, and they had a metal show. And I heard the rehearsal tracks that were from the Corporate Death compilation from Relapse Records in 1994. And I was blown the hell away. Never heard anything like that. Yeah, I know. This is almost 30 years ago. So this is before House by the Cemetery. And I wanted to talk to Mortician and ask them some questions. So this is a couple years before anyone knew what the internet was. So for you young folks, this is what you had to do back then. Back then, we had the white pages. It was a book of everyone in town and their name, their address, their phone number. Back then, people weren't so bananas about privacy and stuff. Different times, I guess. But anyhow, I couldn't use the white pages because Mortician lived in New York City. I got Roger's number from information. What that means is you had to call a number and pay $1.75 to ask for whoever's number that you didn't know. You would call up and say, I need the number for so-and-so, and then the charge would be on your phone bill. So I called up Roger and then asked him a bunch of stupid questions that you would expect a 17-year-old kid to ask. Roger told me that he used a Boss DR50 drum machine, and he was a computer programmer, and he liked to smoke weed. He gave me Will's number. So I called up Will and asked him a bunch of stupid questions. At the time, Will was living with his mother and his brother. His mom and his brother referred to Will as Bill. His mom was super nice. I think her name was Virginia. I wish I'd remembered more of what she said, but she did appear to be quite proud of Will and all that, and had nothing but good things to say about him. As far as my conversations with Will, I remember once asking him what his day job was, and Will said in his New York accent, "Does it matter?" I asked him to growl over the phone. He did. He was like, "Ooh." It was so awesome. If I still remember correctly, I think his number was 914-779-5845. Let me tell you something. The reason I remember this is because before we had the contact list on our phones, we had no choice but to memorize everything. And even as adults, we still remember numbers that have long since been out of service. That's how long-term memory works. It's crazy, huh? And I would talk to Roger and Will every few months, and at one point they told me they were going to have some contest to see who could guess all the horror movie samples. Now this is before Wikipedia and all that. Roger also told me about how he'd gotten arrested and he couldn't tour for a while. He got arrested for selling weed or something. Will told me on another occasion that Roger had been playing drums for about a year, and his exact words to describe Roger's performance was, yeah, he's pretty fast. So anyhow, I did an interview with them shortly after the release of Zombie Apocalypse, and I forget which zine that interview eventually made it to. I did finally see them live in 2004, which would have been their final American tour with Akerkoke. And I was drunk and kind of pissed off Will. Will at one point jabbed two fingers like right into my chest. And if you do that to another man, it's an expression of dominance, and you have to probably fight that person. And even though Will's like 5'7", I knew I didn't want to, I'm like half a foot taller than him. I knew I didn't want to get into a fight with him. I was pretty drunk, and I could imagine, him going bananas, going berserk, just like he did with that cab driver in Poland, or like he did at Maryland Death Fest. I unfortunately missed their show. I was having my transmission on my car worked on, and I finally made it into Baltimore like maybe 3 hours after their set had concluded. So apparently I missed Will making an ass of himself, getting kicked out of Soundstage. So anyhow, tell me what you think.